Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor K.Srinivas from Pondicherry University. I teach philosophy at that university. I am the course coordinator for Indian religion and philosophy in the subject Indian culture. Today in this module, we are going to learn about philosophy of activism of the Bhagavadgita. The objectives of this module are: what is the purport of the Gita? What kind of action does it suggest? What is the outcome of such an action? These objectives would be known once we go through the content, textual content. The Bhagavad Gita is the most important and widely read of the Hindu scriptures. It is part of the great epic, the Mahabharata. Also, it belongs to the Sattvata or the Bhagavata branch of Sri Vaishnava religion. The Lord resorts to action in order to protect righteousness or dharma whenever it is subdued by non-righteousness or adharma. The battle between the Kauravas and Pandavas is fought only to resurrect dharma. The former represent adharma and the later dharma. Of course, Lord Krishna himself proclaims that he takes an avatara in order to resurrect dharma whenever dharma is completely subdued by adharma. Now, he has taken his birth as Lord Krishna in order to resurrect dharma. And he acted as the charioteer of Arjuna, the third son of Pandu, and teaches him the truth about the world, man and ethics, and persuades him to fight the war against his own kith and kin who resorted to adharma. Strictly speaking, they are the embodiment of adharma, and this adharma was ruling the roost. In order to put down this adharma, Lord has to take this birth. This fight to resurrect dharma involves the philosophy of activism or action. One of the most interesting features of the Gita is that it teaches Nishkama karma. Lord Krishna persuades Arjuna, the third son of Pandu, not to renounce action. Before the start of the battle between the Kauravas and Pandavas at Kurukshetra, Arjuna, after seeing his teachers and cousins in the battlefield, became dejected and refused to fight the battle and decided to retire to forest. Then it was Lord Krishna who taught him the philosophy of action by invoking the notion of Swadharma. This concept of Swadharma is very, very important in the Bhagavad Gita because every individual belonging to a particular social group must adhere to his Swadharma. He should not deviate from his Swadharma. Suppose I am a Kshatriya. My Swadharma is to fight the battle. I should not develop any kind of cold feet when there is going to be a battle or a war. So the purpose of this teaching is intended to remind Arjuna about his Swadharma. The Gita introduces us to the term yoga, which means achievement. Normally we think yoga is the yoga introduced by Patanjali or Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. But here In the Bhagavad-Gita, yoga used in a completely different sense. For instance, the object achieved, or the process or the method to achieve it, the teaching of achievement and all other subsidiaries, they come under the category of yoga. For instance, how Arjuna got dejection and how he achieved it is also a kind of yoga. If the practice of meditation is termed as yoga, then the kind of food that is eaten to fix the mind to attain steadiness is also called yoga. This is the sense in which the expression yoga is used in the Bhagavad-Gita. Further, in the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna is portrayed as the teacher of stern duty and shows not his loving nature but dreadfulness, destructive aspect of the logos or the world spirit. In essence, Krishna teaches us to follow the path of the world spirit, logos, which has both creative, sustaining and loving aspects, but also the destructive aspects. Well, the Bhagavad Gita provides us with the quintessence of the Vedas and epics. The systems may disagree with each other's interpretation concerning liberation, the nature of Brahman, God, man, and the world. But the Gita attempts to reconcile the views of all schools and systems, showing their significance in the philosophy of life. Each yoga or marga has its own usefulness. The Gita is a book that inspires the people and guides them through the passes of the various phases of human life. For instance, the Gita is essentially theistic in its doctrines. Brahman and God are identified with each other in the Gita. Brahman is personal, for Lord Krishna calls himself both Brahman and God. The world, including the Atmans, is only a part of him. He transcends everything. Such a position, according to K.Srinivas, is called Panentheism. For instance, in the West, there is an expression called Pantheism, according to which God manifests himself in ever so many ways, in that God is present in everything that is found on the earth. That is what is strictly called Pantheism. But on the contrary, the Panentheism advocated by the Bhagavad Gita claims that it is not that God resides in everything, but everything else resides in the God. This is what we strictly call Panentheism. The Gita advocates Panentheism. Brahman or God are not found in the objects of the world, but are in him. Only ignorant people think that God, who is originally unmanifest, avyakta, has become manifest vyakta. God is far above them. But in spite of his manifestations, God is far above them. They do not know the real nature of God. He is not visible. He is shrouded by Maya, Yoga Maya, which reveals God's yogic power. In other words, although God manifests in ever so many ways, the manifestations of God are nothing but his creations, and God is far from these creations. He is one and undivided, although he appears to be divided into the objects. All the living and non-living beings are only his parts. Even Prakriti, the primordial matter, is his own power. The entire space is filled by him. Here we have to understand him both as transcendent and immanent. He is transcendent because he transcends his own creation. He is immanent because he is there in everything that is created by him. There is nothing other than God. The entire space is filled by him. Here we have to understand him both as transcendent and immanent. There is nothing other than God. Coming to Atmans or Purushas, in the world, the transient Kshara and the intransient Akshara are two kinds of them. The latter is the unmanifest, Avyakta. All the living creatures, the Bhutas and Jivas, are the transient, and the intransient is the onlooker, Kutastha or Sakshi. But the highest Atman, Purushottama, is other than the two. Of course, the commentators differ on the interpretation of the nature of intransient Atman, Akshara. This is witness consciousness for Shankara and Madhva. Well, of course, there are many interpretations with regard to the nature of Atman. The Atman which is identified with Brahman is called Paramatman, or the Absolute Spirit. In contrast to this Absolute Atman or Absolute Spirit, there is a finite Atman which is found in every human individual, Jiva. This is the kind of distinction that the Gita makes. There are finite Atmans, but above these finite Atmans there is one infinite Atman, which is called Akshara, intransient. All other Atmans, which are part and parcel of Jivatman, they are transient. Further, in the Gita, it is mentioned that Lord Krishna, as God, possesses three energies. What are the energies of God? Maya is supposed to be the highest of the three energies. It belongs to God's very being and his power of lordship. It is through this power God rules and controls the world. It is also called the mystery of his yoga, Yoga Maya. Through this mysterious power, God can appear as many, yet remain as one, pure and perfect. In other words, Maya as a Shakti or potency of God cannot transform the power of God. It itself is the power of God. Therefore, it helps God as a power to rule over this world. It is through this Maya that he conceals himself from the world and Atmans. In addition to this Maya, God has two more powers. The higher power, Para, and the lower power, Apara. Both of them are known as Prakriti. The finite Atmans constitute the higher. The lower produces the objects of the material world. through the three attributes, the transparent, the active, and the dark, sattva, rajas, and tamas. In other words, the objects of the world are the jivas, which are the products of this prakriti, possess all the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. They are there in every object. They are all there in every jiva in different proportions. Now coming to the aim of the Gita. The aim of Gita is to persuade Arjuna to take up the life of action. One finds in the Gita an analysis of ethical action. Normally, action is divided into motivated kamya karma and not motivated Nishkama karma forms of action. The term kama in Sanskrit normally is translated to stand for desire. These two forms of action are normally translated as action to fulfill a desire and a desireless action respectively, or as motivated action or action with a motive, and unmotivated action or action without any motive. But these wrong translations may lead to the absurdity, because every action is a motivated action. And the Gita always says that action is very important for any kind of achievement. Even to act, one has to be motivated. Therefore, the question of non-motivated action does not arise. Then how do we support the teachings of the Gita? Therefore, we need a newer translation of these expressions, kamya karma and nishkama karma. If at all such actions are possible, then they are aimless. What kind of actions? Actions without any kind of desire, actions without any kind of motive. No human being acts without a purpose. Even a cow does not move without a purpose. Without a desire to eat hay, is the teaching of the Gita then unnatural? Its teachings become absurdity if we are led by the words desireful and desireless, or motivated and unmotivated. Therefore, the best way of understanding the ethical teachings of the Gita is possible through the traditional distinction made by the Mimamsa and also the explanation given by the Gita itself. Let us see what kind of explanation is given by Mimamsa. Traditionally, there are two kinds of action. They are non-obligatory naimittika karma and obligatory nitya karma. The former type of actions are performed by the individuals for enjoying the fruits of their actions. They are ethical in nature but are performed for personal gains. But actions involving charities, prayers, are performed without any reference to the results. They are only obligatory actions. For instance, the Mimamsa enjoined certain sacrifices to gods, to ancestors, to the teachers, and to all the living beings of the worlds. Also, it recommended the performance of duties pertaining to one social class and stage of life as obligatory. The performance of such sacrifices and such duties sustains the universe and society. It also recommended that certain other sacrifices like charities for men who desire sons, wealth, and so on. But of course, these actions which are performed by an individual in order to obtain certain material gains, they are non-obligatory actions. On the contrary, there are obligatory actions which are performed by the individuals not for the sake of attaining something, but these actions are performed to fulfill one's obligations as duties. For instance, the only non-obligatory actions, for they are performed by the individuals with a desire to achieve something. Let us imagine that there are two individuals helping police to capture an offender. One may help the police for the sake of reward announced by the police, and other may help the police as an obligation towards society, whether there is a reward or not. Similarly, all duties for sustaining the world and society are obligatory on the part of the individuals and are all actions without desire, kama. So this is the fundamental distinction made between kamya karmas and nishkama karma. Again, in this context, desire is understood as personal desire. All actions meant for enjoying their results are called actions with desire. The selfish and egoistic actions are called sakama karmas. For instance, I perform an action in order to obtain something, and selfless and non-egoistic actions are nishkama karmas. Strictly speaking, there is no action which does not involve desire. Even to act in a rightful manner, there is a desire involved in it. Action without desire can be action of a machine. Only machines alone can act without any kind of desire, but this is not possible with human beings. Then desirelessness in the ethics of the Gita has to be interpreted as the absence of desire to enjoy the fruits of the action. Otherwise, an action turns out to be egoistic, for the agent desires to enjoy its fruits. The Gita makes this point very clear in the following manner. First, it interprets God Himself as desire, kama, in man, which is not opposed to law, dharma of the universe. For example, if there is no desire, then men become idle. So therefore, the God Himself is desire. Since He is in everyone, there is desire in everyone. Since there is a desire in everyone wants to act. If God Himself is desire, according to the law of the universe, there can be no escape from every type of desire, just as it is not possible to escape from type of action. Therefore, desireless action has to be understood in terms of non-egoistic action. Desire is one of God's forms, without which no action can be performed. In the absence of an action, there is no support for the world and society. Lord Krishna himself says that mean folk act only when they desire the result for themselves. Therefore, Arjuna should take shelter in reason, buddhi. He should act in accordance with the dictates of reason, and such an action should be performed skillfully. Those who are motivated by their rational desire act only in a particular way, for the reason is of only one type. For instance, those who act irrationally act in many ways. For instance, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 is the only correct answer, but has many wrong answers. One who performs actions in accordance with the law of the universe as the guide is not bound by the results of those actions. All actions, except those of sacrifice, yajna, keep man in bondage. But the word sacrifice is given a new meaning here in this context. What is its meaning? It is giving away to gods, beasts, plants, ancestors, and even the spirits of the lower world. But such sacrifice all remain satisfied and work for the welfare of man and the world. All living beings are born out of food, food out of rain, rain out of sacrifice, sacrifice out of action, action out of Brahma, the creator God, Brahma out of the non-transient Purusha, Akshara. God himself is eternally active without any motive or desire. Now, the Gita also aims at distinguishing right action from wrong action. Also, it talks about non-action. Wrong action is one that is prohibited. The wise and those who see action in non-action and non-action in action. Non-action does not mean one does not act at all. It is a form of ethical action without any sense of egoity, merit or demerit, and the results of action do not matter to the agent of such an action, because the agent of such an action doesn't desire the fruits of such an action. One who performs such a kind of action knows that he is performing it for the sake of law, dharma, but not for his own sake. In fact, the action is performed by his body, which is the product of Prakriti and its attributes, but not by him as Atman. Men should perform actions as skillfully as possible and surrender the fruits of action to God. The other forms of actions are sacrifice, charity, penance. They come under the category of renunciation. They're all actions. The fruits of those actions are not enjoyed by the agents of such actions. One who does not act out of ignorance is under the influence of tamas. Sometimes one may give up actions due to the trouble they involve under the influence of rajas. Both are wrong. A person must perform actions without any desire to acquire their results. Such actions are influenced by sattva. Such a person is the renouncer of action. He is known as jnani, a knowledgeable person. So now, To conclude, the purport of the Gita is to make people act. In the absence of action, there is no activity in the world, then there is no good done to the society. And what kind of action does it suggest? It suggests non-egoistic actions which are performed for the welfare of the society, for the welfare of mankind. So that is the outcome of such kind of Nishkama karma or non-egoistic actions. Friends, for further information, read the suggested readings and also the text so that you can get more information about the philosophy of action of the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you.